Hi, I'm Hayden and I'm one of the content producers here at the Australia Institute, and I'm joined by
Eliza Littleton, a research economist at the Australia Institute.
And so you might have been hearing a lot about unemployment recently. The official unemployment rate is at 4%, which by all kind of headlines is pretty good, right? Like everyone's saying it's pretty good. But when you look past that headline figure, there's a bit of a different story. And part of that story is what's been happening to young people. And that's what the research Eliza has been doing. She's been looking at youth unemployment and how the pandemic has really affected young people's jobs and their livelihoods. So do you want to tell us a bit about your research?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, unemployment rate is 4%. That's quite low by historical standards. However, the youth unemployment rate is still 8.3%. So double the unemployment rate for everyone else. And this is not a new story. So young people have always been overrepresented in unemployment statistics, underemployment statistics. They've always been overrepresented in insecure work. And the pandemic has really kind of exposed the fault lines for youth employment outcomes. Before the pandemic, young people represented 14% of all employment. But during the 2020 lockdowns, they made up 39% of all job losses.
So young people are 14% of jobs, but made up 39% of job losses.
Exactly. And it gets worse in 2021.
Oh.
They were totally smashed by the 2021 lockdown. So overall, job losses in 2021 were less in absolute numbers, but young people made up 55% of the job losses in 2021.
So can you tell us why those young people were so overrepresented in those job losses?
So firstly, young people were overrepresented in working in industries that were hardest hit by the pandemic. And these are customer-facing roles in hospitality and retail, the arts sector. And these were the industries where there were the highest job losses as well. So overrepresented in the hardest hit industries. They also are overrepresented in casual work. So 54% of all young people are employed casually, and 2/3 of all job losses were casual jobs. And the third reason was that government stimulus spending, which is the kind of spending that governments do during economic downturns to, circulate more money and to help protect people's jobs and basically stimulate the economy, that spending wasn't particularly well targeted at protecting young people's jobs.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So we know that when the pandemic hit, the government implemented JobKeeper, which was designed to let people keep their jobs. Did that kind of help young people? Like, was there something going on there and that was a bit of a disconnect?
JobKeeper was an incredibly good policy. So it's a wage subsidy. It was designed to help employers out with the cost of employing people to help protect people's jobs. The way that it was distributed and the kind of design elements of the policy weren't so good for young people. A lot of young people missed out for a couple of reasons. So firstly, because the industries young people were overrepresented in got a very minimal amount of JobKeeper. So only about 20% of JobKeeper went to hospitality and retail, the main employers of young people. The second reason is that people are only eligible to receive JobKeeper if they'd had their casual job for more than 12 months. So full-time, part-time workers got JobKeeper, but casual workers had to be employed with that employer for over 12 months.
And I suppose when you're a young person who's kind of just entering the workforce, a lot more of them are less likely to have been in their job for 12 months, right?
Exactly. So more than any other workers, young people are likely to be in casual work and likely to be in a casual position they haven't been in for more than 12 months. Yep. So they missed out.
And so now we're in the sort of economic recovery, as many people are kind of saying. How are young people going now? Like, are they finding their jobs again? Are they sort of getting back into jobs, or what's happening?
Yeah, well, we're hearing a lot about how now employers are finding it really difficult to get people into jobs.
Workforce shortages.
Workforce shortages. So actually, yes, a lot of young people who lost work during the pandemic have now regained work, which is great, really good. However, you got to ask questions about the quality of that work. And 97% of the jobs regained by young people have been casual or part-time positions.
97%.
Yeah.
97%, that's almost all of the jobs
Regained, yeah.
have been in insecure work, effectively, right?
Exactly. Which means that young people are just as vulnerable to losing their jobs again if another economic downturn hits.
So no, the problem is not quite solved.
The problem isn't resolved, yeah. So we really need some kind of significant changes to the policy framework for young people and supporting them in employment.
And can you tell us about what the government has been doing to try and help young people get jobs?
Yeah, so there is or in existence already a patchwork of employment, youth employment policies that kind of fall into state and federal responsibility. But a lot of them are aimed and targeted at supply side labour market issues. So what I mean by that is that they're measures that help with the individual and preparing the individual for work, like helping them with resume writing and interview skills and making sure they have the qualifications and training they need to get a specific job. So these are supply side measures. And what this really ignores is that effectively there are not enough jobs in the economy for everybody that wants one. In late 2020, for every one job that existed, 4 people were looking for a job. So incredibly competitive labour market. And in a competitive labour market, young people are particularly disadvantaged.
Yeah, so I guess like no matter how good your resume is, if there aren't jobs out there for you to get, it's going to be a tough time. And another thing the report looked at is the consequences of unemployment on these young people. Like, can you tell us about what you found?
Yeah, so there are a range of consequences and, not enough time to go through all of them right now, but we can broadly kind of categorize them as individual consequences and kind of macroeconomy consequences. So when we're looking at the individual, not having a job doesn't just represent a loss of income and financial security, but it represents a loss of connection to society and, it erodes people's confidence and their motivation to continue looking for work, and particularly really early in someone's career, it can be really detrimental to get so many knockbacks from employers.
Yeah, and I've got a quote here that was from the report from someone that was interviewed as part of the research, and they say, "I was starting to rethink my whole degree, if I wasted my time or not. The issue of essential workers came into place, and then you look at yourself and think, how important is my work? If something like a pandemic happened, would I still have a job?" So yeah, like I guess it's there's a mental dimension to the effects. Like it's not just financial. That's what the report shows, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And young people are particularly vulnerable at this point when they're transitioning from study to work.
Yeah, for sure.
But as I mentioned, there are also macroeconomic consequences for unemployment. So we estimated that if every young person who wanted a job had a job, it would be worth about $7 billion in wages to those individuals. Amazing. But it'd also be worth around about $13.7 billion in GDP. So huge amount of money. This is about 5 times as much as the federal government spends on youth employment programs, actually all employment programs, every budget.
So that's $13 billion in money that could be injected into the economy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It means the economy would expand, we'd have more, the government would be collecting more tax revenue, they'd be able to have spend more money in the budget. It's great for everyone.
Sounds like a win-win. So what has the report found in terms of what can actually be done? Because we know that the government's policies are not really working to help these people get into jobs. So what have you found that could actually help?
Yeah, so in the report, we recommend 5 policy changes.
5 big ones.
5 big ones. So the first one is a youth job guarantee, which we can come back to and explain. The second one is adequate income support. So we know that Australia has some of the lowest income security in all OECD countries. And this really undermines young people's capacity to find work.
I suppose when you're struggling to live, day to day, you're struggling to buy the essentials, it's hard to find that extra energy to be, constantly applying and getting out there and interviewing and stuff. Hey,
for sure. The third policy is making tertiary education more affordable. So we all know that tertiary education has become really essential to finding good work in the economy, and the financial barrier of tertiary education is really deterring many young people from going out and obtaining these skills for the future. The fourth recommendation is better protection for casuals. As I mentioned, part of the reason why young people are so vulnerable to economic downturn is that they have very little protection under the design of a casual contract. The fifth recommendation is better targeted stimulus spending. So this refers back to my point earlier about JobKeeper and how young people missed out on it. So better targeted stimulus spending will help to protect young people's jobs in the future.
Awesome. All right, and let's cycle back to that youth jobs guarantee, because that one sounds pretty cool. So let's say I'm a youth and I've just gotten out of education and I'm out and ready to get into the workforce, and there's my job guaranteed.
Yeah, it kind of works like that. It's a little bit more complicated, but basically a youth job guarantee aims to guarantee young people who have registered as unemployed either a job, an internship, or another training opportunity. So it's not about forcing young people into jobs, whatever that job is. It's about giving them the option to build a career and plan for their futures.
So a nice structural, logical step after education to sort of help get into the workforce, basically.
Exactly. And what's kind of great about this youth job guarantee is it moves the onus away from young people and towards the government to find these kind of early career opportunities for young people. So it's obviously not one policy, it's multiple policies, and it actually targets both the supply and the demand side of labour market outcomes, which is why it's such a strong policy recommendation. So creating jobs for young people specifically, and creating training opportunities and apprenticeships and internships, many of the things that governments already do, but we want more. And then on the other side, it's about deprivatising employment services, increasing funding and making sure they're better resourced to provide personalised support for young people.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for telling us, and I hope you learned something today. And if you'd like to hear more about the Australia Institute's work, you can subscribe to our mailing list. I'll put a button right about here for you to click on. And please subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the videos that we make.